Okay. So Gary, what a year to become 60 in, 2020. Many happy returns from a few weeks ago, obviously, but I guess you didn't get to celebrate your 60th the best way that you wanted
to. There's nothing to celebrate about being 60.
Wow, it's a milestone.
Apart from the fact I made it to 60, that's about the only thing.
So how has 2020 been for you, I guess? Like, it's been such a weird year.
Well, I think I'm probably more fortunate than many in the sense that I could keep working. Obviously not at the start, but then football started again. So thankfully that's the case. I've got so many people I know, so many friends, particularly ones in the perhaps hospitality world that have suffered so much. But there's a lot of things we've missed in 2020. I love the odd holiday, which I've not been able to go on. So I miss the sunshine. Miss seeing people. A lot of the time, obviously, we had a little window in the middle where you could see one or two friends and stuff in the summer. But that's been difficult. So, and at times not being able to see the family for certain reasons. So it's been a tough year. It's been but much tougher for many other people than me. Managed to keep my health, whereas many haven't. So it's been a awful year. I think in all sorts of different ways. And here we are again, back in another lockdown, but at least I think we've got some kind of glimmer of light at the end of this miserably dark tunnel with the vaccine coming in. So hopefully they won't mess that up and get it out there.
Yeah, I mean, this last year is kind of, I feel like I've been in a bit of a circus. I mean, there's a lot of clowns for sure, but I mean, we've kind of just like, it seems like this never ending show, but like you say, hopefully now we're kind of seeing a bit of light at the end of the tunnel. And it's good to the football. I think it's really good that there's it's allowed to carry on the elite football, because I think that's such a huge impact, especially on people's mental health. Just being able to kind of have that bit of an escapism. At first, I found it a bit hard, not to watch without fans there. I don't know how you sort of watched as a fan. Did you find that a bit weird at first?
It's very different, and I don't think any of us are trying to pretend that it's the same. But it is better than nothing, and it's given us some entertainment over the months, something to watch at home when we're stuck indoors. It's a bit odd without a crowd. There's no question about that, and I think I might even get a bit emotional when we do have a full house and being at a game again, because it's funny because during these times, obviously during all times, you get clips on social media, etc., where you see old football games. And then you notice the crowd roar and you think, oh, that's odd, because it's become commonplace. It's so commonplace and so normal now to not have a crowd that then you go, then a bit of nostalgia and the crowd's there and the kind of big noise or, the whole of the crowd singing, etc. It just makes you realise how much we've missed it. And I think once it does return to normal, which it will down the line, because I think everyone's desperate to get to a football match again. So. But once we've got full stadiums again, I think it'll be a sign that life's returned to normal, and B, it'll be emotive because we've missed it so much.
Yeah, it's like when you see those kind of like on this day. I'm a Newcastle fan. I know you're Leicester, so we won't talk about the game at the weekend.
Not many days then.
No, there's not many. Not yeah, I don't know. You're absolutely right. But even just, I think there was on this day. It was a few weeks ago. We saw Shearer pipe one in against Everton. That one, and just see that euphoric roar of the crowd and the Shearer celebration with the hand in the air, and just those moments are special, really. And really missing those amazing moments that we're all missing.
I know we could have had. We've done exactly the same thing the other day when Tielemans knocked it in the corner, couldn't we?
Walked into that one. Walked into that one. No, walked into that one. So how you feel? Well, I guess we'll talk a little bit about Leicester if we must. Yeah. I guess a few years ago from Leicester winning the league, the year after, I suppose was a bit inevitable in the sense of it was kind of all changed. The sort of dynamics of the squad, the winning title teams changed a bit. But how was that year as just not only as the face and match of the day, but as a Leicester fan, a Leicester boy, seeing Leicester do it?
It was incredible. I mean, it really was. it was a miracle. It's funny because people say to me, "What's your best moment in the sport?" And my best moment in sport is something that, and I've obviously played at the top level for a long time. My favourite moment in sport ever is Leicester winning the league. I had nothing to do with it. It was magical. I mean, I've 3 of my 4 boys support Leicester, and obviously they started the season well. They were getting so excited, but I knew we wouldn't. I knew there was no chance we'd actually carry on and go to the league. No chance. Hence the silly tweet that got me in my underpants. But then it came, and then we won at Man City, and you started to think, well, it's not impossible. And then because Leicester were doing so well, all the games got pushed to a Sunday. So I do match day on Saturday, obviously, and then I always watch the football on Sunday. So every Sunday after Sunday after Sunday, I used to sit down. The boys used to come over, and we used to sit and watch, and they seemed to just keep winning 1-0, 1-0, 2-0, 1-0, and it was like, wow. And every game was purgatory watching it. Was because the closer they got to winning the title, the more it mattered that they did, and the more the fear that they wouldn't. What would that mean, especially to my kids? And it was incredible. And then obviously they actually won the title on a day when they weren't playing, when Tottenham were at Chelsea, and Tottenham needed to win to stay in it, and Hazard bent that one in the top corner. And I was downstairs, and I was in floods of tears. It still gets me a little bit. And because it was just, for me, the biggest miracle in team sport, in any sport, anywhere, anytime. Because it's like, say West Brom escape relegation this season and then win the league next season. Because that's exactly what Leicester did. They came from miles back. They won 7 of the last 9 games, I think, to just beat relegation. And then the next season, they won the league. Yeah. And it was beyond belief. It was just magical. It really was. It was, and now they're up there again. And obviously the club's moved on, and it's got quite strong now. But and this season, if ever there's going to be a season of an upset, it could be this one, because the nature of no fans and no home advantage, very difficult to keep your form, injuries, illnesses because of COVID, etc. So it could produce a random winner this year. And if it did, it would be incredible. If it were Leicester again, it would be ridiculous. But it is actually possible now, whereas I didn't think it was possible in 2016.
Yeah. Now, well, speaking of winners, obviously a few weeks ago you hosted the Sports Personality of the Year award, and Lewis Hamilton won it. And there's news he's going to be knighted and stuff. Yeah. I don't know how you feel, but I always feel there seems to be a bit of a between the Lewis Hamilton and the public perception of him. There seems to be a sort of barrier between that. Like, I don't know if the public kind of respect his unless you're a fan of the Formula One, his personality just doesn't come across as relatable. I mean, how do you feel?
I wonder why. I don't know. Obviously, he gets attacked a little bit because he lives in Monaco, but all motor racing drivers live in Monaco. It's a global sport. It's not one where he's expected to live here. They talk about the tax thing. It was fine when Sir Jackie Stewart did it, or one or two of the others. So I'm glad he's been given the knighthood. I think it's thoroughly meritorious. He's quite possibly our greatest ever sportsman. People say, yeah, but he's in the best car. Yeah, but the best footballer's getting the best team. Yeah, that's how it works in sport. It's like Messi plays for Barcelona, Ronaldo played for Real Madrid and Juventus. That's how it works. Therefore, they'll win more than anyone else, but they're there for a reason. And he's a genius. There's no question about that, Lewis Hamilton. And he thoroughly deserves it. He does a lot of good. And I even saw somewhere that he still is in the top 5,000 people who pay tax in this country with all the peripheral stuff. So I've met him a few times. I like him a lot. I massively admire him. His work ethic is unbelievably good. And he's an absolutely brilliant driver. And he's proven that year in, year out.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was great seeing the work that Marcus Rashford's done this year, on not just on the pitch but off the field as well. Yeah. But it was really, I was discouraged to see how he was kind of met with resistance from the government, and and you also get people that, like, the right wing critics kind of saying, oh, it's all a PR move and all this. But he just people are happy to jump on footballers and sort of like moan about how much money they make and stuff. But when you see someone like Marcus Rashford that's going out of his way to really make a positive difference into the environment. He remembers his roots at the end of the day. He remembers his roots, where he came from with his mum. And, you know, it was really sad to kind of see some of the reaction he got, I felt.
Well, you always, I mean, there is negative reaction to everything, but I think by and large, Marcus has been massively given massive amount of plaudits by the vast majority of the British public who appreciate what he's doing. It's remarkable. He's only just turned 23. I think to see what he's done to get government to make U-turns, and at least they did. At least they did listen, and they were turned, whether it's, you know, by Marcus. So let's give him credit for that, at least. And he's actually made a serious difference, and to do that at his age, when also performing well on the pitch, because obviously if he hadn't in this period, they'd have quickly jumped on his back, the critics, and said he needs to concentrate on his football, he's not, you know, he's taking his mind off the ball, but he hasn't done that. He's been great on the pitch, and he's been even better off the pitch with something even more important. You know, footballers get a lot of stick, and obviously we've seen in the last week or two players erring and going out and partying, etc., when they shouldn't be. They've made mistakes, which is undoing a lot of the goodwill that they gained during the first lockdown, when you know, Jordan Henderson got the captains together, raised loads of money for the NHS. Marcus Rashford, we saw a lot of stuff on with the players getting together about racism, not just in sport but in life. So there was so much good. Obviously, you know, footballers are there. There's hundreds and hundreds of them, and they, you know, they're easy targets. They make, you know, they probably do stuff that other young men do, but they have to have a degree of responsibility. And some of the behaviour, particularly in the last few weeks, has been pretty unacceptable. But it is a tiny minority of them, and we do forget. You know, they're very young men. I mean, you know, I've got 4 boys that are all the age of footballers now in their 20s, and you know, they have fun in life, but they're not footballers, so they're not there with someone with taking a picture of them at every move. And it's I'm not trying to defend some of the actions in recent times, but you know, young men make mistakes. Young men can be idiots.
Oh, I know that too well.
Not just footballers, but that's just young men across the board. You know, they mature and they don't think things through properly. So I think sometimes we can be overly judgmental. But you know, they are role models, though. Whether they like it or not, it's not a choice. It's, you know, they're given a talent, and that's where they've got it. But I think by and large, most of them do a massive amount of good. It's certainly in the community. Most of it you never hear about. But clubs are brilliant generally with local communities.
Yeah, I see that Roy Hodgson got a bit of stick for playing. I mean, you're the expert guy. How do you pronounce his name? Because I'm going to butcher it. The captain of Palace,
Milivojevic.
Yeah,
I got that wrong.
Yeah, well, it's something like that. Giles would know. But yeah, so I mean, do you think Roy was right to play? And he's the captain of Palace. He needs. I mean, Roy would have got stick if he would have lost that game.
I imagine, and the same with other managers. I saw Pep. So in public, they're not defending them, but they're not going too hard on them. I would imagine behind closed doors, in the manager's room, they will be getting a severe ticking off and told how much they've let everybody down. I'd be massively surprised if that wasn't the case. It can just exacerbate things if managers go publicly and do that to players. It's a balance of what it, you know, whether how much you do publicly and how much you keep behind closed doors. I would imagine. I would imagine all the managers went apoplectic when they heard what their players were doing and gave them a proper grilling.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm quite intrigued to know actually how much the players' sort of wages have changed since you were playing, because I guess you were probably one of the most paid, best paid footballers when back in your day in the world. And so how was that?
I was for a number of years, and I was, it was very well paid. And I was obviously at Barcelona. Then when I came back to Tottenham, I was one of the best paid players in the world, earning roughly about what a top player would now earn in a week, in a year. A year in a week. Not that I'm complaining. Obviously I make a really, really good living. but it's remarkable how it's moved on. I think when I was at Barcelona, I was on about 320 grand a year, which is obviously a lot of money, but that is now, a week's salary for
Ozil, not even playing.
So, but it doesn't, that's always been it. Whatever era you're playing, it's. But the recent time, obviously, since the inception of the Premier League, it's accelerated massively, and good luck to them. And you can never justify, entertainers' wages. Let's call it entertainers. But people do have a pop because it's footballers, and it gets mentioned more because they're footballers. I don't know whether that's because they're working class lads and people think, they've done too well for themselves. Nobody ever complains really about big business people earning billions or people that own newspapers, the same people that then criticise the players for earning too much money. Other sports, even it's okay. Golf, it's fine. No one complains about the golfers. The top players earn fortunes. Formula One, we've talked about before. Basketball in America. Or let's take it away from there. What about the top actors in the world? They earn absolute fortunes. The top singers in the world. That is the nature of sport and entertainment. If you're at the top of your field, you will get paid a lot of money. And you can't justify that against, let's say, people in the NHS at the moment. It's a pointless, and even in my world, in television, where especially in football, where it's you get paid very well. I'm aware of that. Could I justify my salary against that of a nurse? No, they do a much more important job than me. But it's kind of how it is, and it's it's what you do with it as well, I suppose. After that you can try and make a difference in some ways. But no, footballers obviously get seriously well paid, but they do tend to get reminded of it more than anybody else that gets seriously well paid.
Yeah, it's always something. A footballer in particular, I don't know, even with Newcastle, whether it be Shelby or Callum Wilson, or Callum Wilson's on this a week. It's always a week. It's never what they make a year. It's always they're on this a week.
It's probably 52 times what they get a week. So
yeah, exactly. So what age was it you started, I guess, being on the books at Leicester when you started your footballing career?
I was spotted when I was about 12 playing local football, and then I went to train with Leicester after school on Tuesdays and Thursdays until I was about 16. Then I had a trial, and I was taken on as apprentice and turned professional when I was 18. So and then I never really thought I'd make it. Not really. I mean, I loved it. It was a dream, and I was driven, but I didn't really have that much self-belief. But every level that I got to, I thought this would find me out. But every time I managed to cope and still score goals. And that carried on right through till England, obviously.
Yeah. And did you always think that you might not make it then, when you said you weren't sure that if you would make it? Did you think
I was never particularly confident. And it's funny, my dad, who passed away 2 or 3 years ago, we talked a lot in the last 3-4 months of his life, because I was up and down to Leicester to see him all the time, and he'd seen an interview where I talked about the fact that I never really thought, I thought I'd get found out whenever I got like the reserves or the first team, and then it was England, and we had this comment, and I said, what did you think? And he went, I always knew you'd make it. I always knew. In fact, so much so, and it reminds me, when I was 11, I passed the 11 plus, which was which you got to be a certain age to remember. And I passed the 11 plus, which meant I could go to a grammar school. But in the time that I took the exam to the time of getting the results, we moved house, and we moved just outside the city perimeters in Leicester, just to the place called Kirby Muxloe in the county, which meant I could only go to one school, and that school was a rugby playing school. And my dad said, I can't let that happen. We're going to move back into the city. We'd only been there 6 months or so. So we're going to move back into the city so that you can go to a football school. So it took obviously a time to find a house. And in that interim period, I lived with my grandparents for 10 months and ate a lot of cake. even more
grandparents are good
capable
for.
lockdown. And so that enabling me to go to a grammar school, not just because it was a grammar school, but because it played football. And I never thought twice about it. But you know, when I think back now, I think, Christ, that's a hell of a statement, a hell of a move when a kid's 11 years old. He must have seen a lot more in me than I did.
Yeah. Was it your main sport as a kid, like the one you really enjoyed competing the most?
I love both football and cricket.
Cricket.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it wasn't one or the other. It was football in the winter and then cricket in the summer. But
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I loved both, and I honestly thought I had more chance at cricket.
Oh, really?
I was, I kind of captained Leicestershire schools right through. I was a batsman, and latterly I took to wicket keeping because I used to get broad fielded. Just wanted to get a bit more involved, but I was all right. I mean, I'll never know whether I would have made it or not, but it was, I loved it. But once football's opportunity came along, cricket kind of took a back seat. I still played it. I played it right throughout my career.
Yeah.
In the summer and stuff for the MCC and stuff like that. So, but I love cricket.
Yeah. Did any of your kids want to kind of get into football, or was it kind of a bit difficult for them because they had, I guess, really big shoes to fill in terms of being Gary Lineker's sons?
Well, they all played a little bit. I mean, George, by his own admission, wasn't particularly talented, my oldest.
Okay.
In fact, he was always saying, though, when he was a tiny little kid, he said, I'm going to be a footballer when I grow up. Yeah. And then we started playing and stuff. And he was about, 10 or 11 years old. And one night, I put him to bed and he said, Dad, I said, what? He said, I'm not going to be a footballer, am I? I went, well, it's difficult. It's difficult.
Politely put.
Harry, my middle two were pretty good players. Angus was all right, my youngest, but my middle two, Harry and Tobias. Harry had loads of ability, lots of talent and speed, and he could score goals and stuff. But he never loved it enough. He'd go to the Sunday some mornings and go, I don't really want to play today, Dad. I mean, fair enough. And Tobias was my number three was on Chelsea Academy for 2 or 3 years. He was a nice little footballer. But he had that Osgood Slatters on his knees, both knees. He couldn't play for about 2 years. And so that kind of did for him. But I think unless they're unbelievably talented and unbelievably good, it's better off they find another walk of life, because the comparisons would be very difficult for a long period of time. So I think it's fine. The important thing is they're happy, they're good kids, they're nice people. Were you
one of those parents on the touchline going shouting on a Sunday morning?
I was one of those parents on the touchline that hated every other parent on the touchline.
Oh, really?
For doing exactly that. It's my pet hate in life. I saw so many things that were, and 99% of what parents shout on the touchline is wrong. Mm-hmm. It's wrong. They're given the wrong information. They don't know what they're talking about. They instill fear into their own children. They ramble a load of, don't mess about booting. It's like, shut up. I never said a word when I watched on the touchline, not a word. Parents used to drive me absolutely to distraction. They don't know how damaging it is. I once saw a bloke run on. It was like a five-a-side tournament that one of my boys played in, and then we got to the semi-final or something, and this father ran on the pitch to his own son, picked him up by the scruff of the neck, and was shaking him. It's not funny that he's shaking him and saying, wow, you'll never make it if you play like this. And I'm thinking, mate, this kid is not going to make it anyway, not in a million years. Just let him enjoy it. Let him enjoy the game. It used to do my head in. I was so glad when they all finished school. I didn't have to put up with that anymore.
Do you ever see the ones? I really feel sorry for the kids that have they're the goalie of the team, and they have their dad standing behind that goal, and you hear the dad talking about posture, positioning, and all this, and it's like the damage you must be doing to that kid as he's trying to play as goalie.
I know they do it. I know they do it with the best intentions, and they don't realise what they're doing. But it's, they're not helping.
No,
they're not helping. Instilling fear into children is not great. They're not going to enjoy their sport.
Yeah. Well, as a Newcastle fan, I suppose I've got to ask you about a man very close to you, Bobby Robson. I saw that More Than a Manager, that film by Robson, a beautiful film, and with yourself in it, and Pep Guardiola, and Mourinho, and Shearer, and all the Ronaldo, Brazilian Ronaldo, all talking about Bobby Robson. And I suppose I was really interested to know about your relationship, not only just as a footballer, as someone that played under Bobby Robson, but on a personal level as well.
Bobby was. Can't say enough good things about him. He was such a lovely guy and such a enthusiastic bloke. And he was demanding as well at the same time. You couldn't he'd give you a little ticking off if you strayed off course at any point. But he's the kind of bloke you'd run through a brick wall for. And that was his thing. He wasn't particularly the most brilliant coach, not a Pep Guardiola in that sort of thing. But he was fiercely loyal to his players. He had a great understanding of what was a good player, which sounds simple, but you'll be surprised how many managers have messed up by not seeing the talent that they've got. And he wasn't easily shifted by the media or the press. When things were not going so well, he'd stick with his world-class players. He knew that even when players had a dip in form, he was massive. That's when he was at his best. He was most supportive. And I had that once or twice in my career, and I know others had the same. He understood the game, and he was just really encouraging. And he was one of those people. It wasn't just about his football, but he's one of the great enthusiasts of life. I remember when I did the documentary with him a long time before that particular documentary you're talking about, when he took me around St James's Park.
I remember this, yeah. Beautiful.
And he spent 15 minutes talking to me about these wooden doors on the boardroom. Yeah. It was, he had that kind of enthusiasm, and he was always like that. It was about anything. It'd been, it'd be some bird in the garden, feathers variety, and stuff like that, or whatever it would be. And he was a lover of life.
Mm-hmm. Was one of the, I guess, probably the most hardest moments for you in your career? Would it be that penalty shootout with Bobby for England?
Yeah, it's the only thing I look back on in my career. I think regret's the wrong word, because we try our best. There's no regrets. It's just the biggest disappointment. The one thing I look back and think, if only, was if we'd have won that penalty shootout. Because I honestly feel we'd have been strong favourites in the final. We were a good side. I think I've seen the game in its entirety now against Germany. I thought we were marginally the better side, and it could have gone our way. And Germany, they were a really, really good side as well. We played really well. So that's the only thing. And I know Bobby shares that. I had that conversation with him. That it's the one thing he looks back on. And it's the same thing. Not every day. But every now and again, you see, maybe playing, maybe covering the World Cup for the BBC or something. And then they'll be showing some of the old games, and we'll see that. And you start to think, oh, God, we're close. It's like, Chris Waddle hits the inside of the post in extra time, and it bounced out. If that bounces in or bounces to one or two of the players, Platty or myself coming in, we were that far from the World Cup final, and then you're just 90 minutes away from footballing immortality. And that's the only thing, really. I don't, people talk about Bobby Charlton's record, goal scoring record, so that, it would have been nice, but it's not a big deal. But winning the World Cup would have been. It would have been. It's every now and again you just think, Christ, so close.
Yeah. I think Bobby even says it as well. He said every one of the German penalties, right in the corner.
Right in the corner. I mean, Peter Shilton gets a bit of stick because he didn't save one, but it's kind of my fault because I roomed with Peter Shilton, and we'd watched. We'd spent 2 World Cups together and a European Championship together. We'd watched penalty shootouts, and we were in the room and we were saying, if we get a penalty shootout, why don't the keepers stand still and wait to see where the ball's going to go? Because there's always, like, a couple of them are really down the middle, and you're guaranteed to save 2. And that should be enough to win you a penalty shootout, or at least to go close. So that was, we decided to do that all between. I mean, it's his decision ultimately, but kind of take some of the responsibility. And if you watch the penalties, he went the right way on every one.
That's the more frustrating bit.
Corners was perfect, and normally that's not the case. That is a rarity what happened. So So that's, I'm defending Peter Shilton because he, people think, my God, but every one of their penalties was right in the corner. But anyway, there you go. It's a true story.
Does that take a while to get over such a heartbreaking moment like that? I mean, like you say, you still a lot of the time you're thinking about it, but at the time as well, when you came so close as a young professional footballer, do you have to be really mentally tough to get over that experience of coming so close?
Well, yeah, I'm still not over it, obviously. No, it was tough. It was tough. But at the same time, we knew we'd done ourselves justice. I think, we did a nation proud. We performed as best we possibly could. We were a good side. We played some good football. We showed some real guts and spirit in winning some games when we weren't playing necessarily that well. The magical moment of Platt's volley against Belgium, a couple of, penalties coming back from Cameroon, who were such a good side. So there were great moments, and we fought back even in the semi-final from going a really unlucky goal down, that free kick, and then obviously coming back to draw in that one. So we knew we'd done ourselves proud, which is I think the real disappointments, the real letdowns are when you've not done yourselves justice. So there's a difference.
Yeah. Well, so speaking of difficult times and speaking of guts, and I can relate to this. What about that time, at England, you had a bit of a dodgy stomach playing for England?
One, yeah.
I mean, how did you? Was that before? Did you know, before that you weren't feeling well before the game?
I'd not been very well all night. I kind of. I don't know whether it was. Who knows what it was, but whether it was a bug or whether it was some dodgy food or. But I'd kind of been not particularly well through the night, and I got up and it carried on a bit in the day, and I didn't tell anyone because I didn't want to miss out. I was the kind of, most players are that, you see players now rotated and stuff like that would do my head in. And I know I spoke to Shearer and Mighty, they're all the same. They would, you just want to play, and all this tiredness nonsense. You just some of the games when you're most tired, you perform your best. I mean, the game against Germany, the semi-final, before I couldn't walk. But somehow adrenaline kicks in, you get through it. But anyway, so I wasn't very well. I kept it to myself, and then the game starts, and I start cramping up after about 20 minutes, and I thought, oh, this is not good. And I held on till half time, and then I went to the loo at half time because I thought that should be all right now. I come out the second half, 10, 15 minutes in, whatever it was, starts again, and the ball goes down the side, and I run over, and I kind of sort of a tackle. It's good, much of a tackle you ever get from me. And as I slipped down, I kind of relaxed, and it just was a bit gross. But I thought, oh my god, what do I do now? And thankfully, we had dark blue shorts on. And I'm sitting in the front. If you ever look at the footage, there's a bit where Gary Stevens comes in, the right, and he comes in. What's wrong? My links, what's wrong? I went, you can see me going, I've shit myself. And then I'm shoveling it out of my shorts and doing like the doggy thing to try and get it. The pitch was wet, thankfully, because it rained just before, so at least I could wipe my hands clean and stuff. But it was horrible. And then I had to carry on playing. And funny enough, I got a bit more space after that. And then, of all things, I'm cramping again, and Bobby saw I was in trouble, so he took me off with about 10 minutes to go. And every ground you ever play in the world, the dugout, or 99% of them, the dugout is on the side where the tunnel is. But at this ground in Cagliari, no, the dugout was on the opposite side of the tunnel. So I had to go and sit on the benches with all the subs and stuff, and you could see them all just sliding away. Rotten. But that was, I think that might have been one of the worst experiences. I imagine. It's funny now. It's funny now, but at the time, honestly, I'll tell you.
Oh no. Yeah.
I just wanted to bury myself.
Well, no, you've shared your experience, so I'm going to share mine now. I can kind of relate. I was, I hadn't slept the night before, and I had to go give a talk at school about 2.5 hours away. Got in the car, drove. I was like, I haven't slept. I need to have energies for these kids and give this talk. So during this 2.5 hour drive, I decided that it'd be good to drink some Red Bulls, And so I had a few Red Bulls and all that, and I'm giving this talk in the class to this in assembly to these kids, and coming towards the end, and I'm thinking I'm in trouble here, like my stomach, I'm in trouble, and then I thought I would risk, a fart.
Oh
And
no,
yeah,
that one.
and it was what I can describe as a bit of a shark that came out, and I was like,
Yeah.
right, thank you know, it's happened. I just need to get to the toilet as soon as this assembly finishes. Tried to rush to the end of my speech and like, right. And then the head teacher comes and goes, right, now we're gonna let you kids ask some questions while he's here. And I'm like, no, so another 20 minutes whilst I've like basically had a bit of a shitting experience of my own. So I know I can appreciate the difficulty of that. Yeah, so
Shit happens.
Shit happens. So what I guess what are the what's for you the highest moment of your career, I suppose, apart from Leicester winning the league, but I guess professionally?
Yeah, apart from Leicester winning the league, on a team basis, it was probably winning the FA Cup with Spurs. That's something I dreamed about as a kid, and I'd lost in the '86 final, having put Everton ahead against Liverpool. So to win that was amazing. On a personal level, the Golden Boot in '86 changed my life in so many ways. It was incredible, and one or two games along the way, hat-trick against Real Madrid and 4 for England against Spain. So there's some magical moments amidst the poo.
Poo aside, pretty much.
Poo aside, there's some good
moments. But I guess what is it? Because I've Sunday league, and the ball might hit my knee and go in, and even that just euphoric feeling of scoring a goal in a Sunday league to get an equaliser or win a game for your team is an amazing feeling. So I can only imagine, what is it like, the feeling you get when you score a goal in a big game?
It's very difficult to actually to put it into words, and I think it's like when you follow in England and suddenly they score a goal in a knockout game or something, and how absolutely bonkers everybody goes. Well, it's kind of like that times 20. Yeah. When it's yourself that's done it, it's almost like an explosion of different emotions. Joy, disbelief, relief is one as well. That's often in there, and it's just like it's almost indescribable, but it's it's like the equaliser against Germany in the semi-final of the World Cup. I mean, it's hard to describe. It would have felt better if we'd have gone on to win, but at that moment, it was just like the complete explosion of different emotions, magical.
Yeah, and I've got to ask, obviously we had some other sad news this year with the passing of Diego Maradona. I mean, and you did that amazing tribute for him. Really nice words. I mean, what was he? I know Messi is again up there in terms of one of the best players that you've seen, but I guess in terms of you playing with and playing against, like,
from my generation, he was head and shoulders. Well, he was head and shoulders smaller than anyone else, but he was head and shoulders above everyone else when it came to playing football. He was unbelievable. He could do stuff that, I played with lots of great players for and against, but every one of those players was pretty much in awe of what Diego could do. He was that much on another level. It was just incredible. I mean, it's not meant as a pun in any way, but his left foot was like he could manipulate the ball like it was using his hand. And he has a little burst of pace, incredibly strong. So many similarities actually with Messi. I never thought I'd see another player that would compare with Diego, but Messi certainly does. I think it's very difficult to say who's the best because different circumstances, different people, different times. And when Diego was playing, you could just kick lumps out of people, which they did. The pitches were awful. You're playing on terrible surfaces, whereas nowadays they're all playing on carpets, and you still get a load of people kicking you, but nothing like the levels. And once they've got a yellow card, they have to be careful. So it encourages dribbling, and it's been one of the great rule changes. But there are so many similarities between them. They're both diminutive. They've both got that left foot. They can both beat people for fun. They both can score great goals, and they can both assist and make wonderful passes. But so I think in my lifetime, they're the best two footballers that I've ever seen.
Yeah, and I think I saw on your Twitter a couple. It might have been yesterday actually. I think there was a wonderful video of Celtic versus Barcelona. And Scott Farrell just goes in, just wants to kick Messi, doesn't he? Really, just stop him.
It's impossible though. And
do
you know what another great thing about Messi is?
Yeah,
he never dives. He doesn't
No,
die.
yeah.
He stays up, and they kick him, and he stays up, and he stays up, and he stays up until they do whack him. So, you know, especially in the modern game where it just needs a flick on someone's foot and they're flying on the floor. I think, you know, to see the best player in the world actually being honourable and trying to stay up is, I think, hugely encouraging.
Yeah. What do you think winds you up more as a football fan, though? VAR or players diving? Which is the one, if you could get...
I don't see that. There's not much diving. It's quite rare for a player just to dive in the air and without any contact whatsoever. Now, that for me is a dive. If they feel a little knock nowadays and they go down, I understand it. I mean, I bought fouls in my career. I never dived, ever. There's never a point where I thought, oh, I'm going to leap over it. But there's definitely times in my career, especially when you go with goalkeepers, you just knock it past them. And you can see, if you can time it right to knock it past them, you know they're going to have to foul you. Now, that's a different thing. That's like buying fouls in basketball or whatever else it is. But actually diving is, you don't see that very often. The problem is we've got now is because of VAR, we're exacerbating the problem. Because now there's this microscopic look to see if there's any contact, and it's taking it away from being a contact sport. So, of course, players are going to go down if they feel a little tap against their shin, because if the referee gives it, they know they're not going to, you know, they'll see on their replay that there's a modicum of contact, when actually it shouldn't be enough to produce a foul. But the problem is when they do actually try and stay on their feet, even if there's been contact, they don't give the penalty. So therefore, why are they going to stay on their feet? We're not encouraging honesty. So it needs a little bit of a look at. And I think the whole thing, it's not a fault of VAR, but it is exacerbated by VAR because they can look at this microscopically and see if there's a flick of a sock against the sock. And they go, well, that's it. That's enough not to overturn the decision. So it's where it is. And I'm not quite sure what, how we get out of it. Unless if they get rid of VAR, then you can probably do it, but they're not going to. So there's no point.
It's just when you see a goal that's a goal happens and no one's appealing it, and it's like, wait, VAR in progress, and the players just had a goal scored against them. Go, hang about, we might get away with this. So like, no one's even appealed it, and it's like a toe offside or something.
Yeah. I think they've done a little bit better in the last 2 or 3 weeks. I think they've obviously got together. I don't think there's any question about this. They've got together and said, hang on a minute, we need to look at this. They're making the decisions quicker. They're not overturning many now. So I think they're looking towards the clear and obvious error. And I think that's all VAR ever should have been for. They've just got carried away with it, and it's become an extra referee. Whereas all you really ever needed was someone, it's like, I say what it should have been is like, you've got the referee doing the game. He should get one of these mates who perhaps does a bit of refereeing himself to be watching on his phone. He can be watching the game like that. And then the game goes on. And then all of a sudden you go, oh my God. Hey, mate, you've made an absolute howler there. It's the worst decision you've ever seen. Honestly, it's Maradona punching it in the net.
Yeah.
Frank Lampard's 3 feet over the line, although we've got goal line technology. That's probably not the right analogy, but so I think that's what it should be for. It's difficult because where do you draw the line of how bad a decision has to be before it's a clear and obvious error? But I do think they've shifted a little bit in the last 2 or 3 weeks, and if they stick with that, I think it'll be better. The other thing is the offside nonsense. Level is no longer onside, it seems. They'd find a tiny bit. My thing on that is you look at one replay, you draw a line across the pitch where they are, and you can immediately see whether someone's offside or not. If you can't tell and you have to go to the dots and stuff, it's not clear and obvious mistake. It's level, therefore he's onside. Yeah. And but I don't know whether they'd help those answers or not. But anyway,
I get that. Yeah, I think I need to ask you this because a few Newcastle fans have asked me to ask you this about Paul Gascoigne, because I think naturally when the news about Maradona came out, a lot of football fans in this country probably thought about Paul Gascoigne because he has been for years and years he has been targeted about his off the field problems that he's had. I don't know if you have any sort of contact with Paul Gascoigne at the minute or how he's doing, but I mean,
quite a lot.
Yeah, quite a lot.
I've had regular phone calls from Gaza. He seems to be doing all right. I think it's always going to be a little bit up and down. But I've got a lot of time for Gaza. I mean, he's obviously mildly bonkers, but he's in a lovely way, and he's very generous. He's great fun. obviously I've known him for an awfully long time, with very different personalities, but you know, he was extraordinary to play with in many ways, not just for his ability, but the fun that you would have around him. So, you know, fingers crossed he can continue along this a path of doing okay. But right. I think, you know, life's tough after football for Paul. But he's you know, he has his ups and downs, but I think overall he seems to be doing all right. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, I suppose it is for a lot of footballers though. Once you kind of have the end of your career, about what to do next.
It's a bigger issue than people think. Obviously, they get, you know, huge salaries, but with huge salaries usually comes huge spending. Football ends, the huge salaries stop. I think you know, lots of players struggle when they finish. You know, there's only so many coaching jobs or manager jobs or punditry jobs in television, etc. That leaves a lot without work. The self-esteem can sometimes dip with some of them, and they can have problems at home. I think the divorce statistics amongst footballers from the age of 35 to 40 is something ridiculous, like 60-70%.
Oh wow.
And obviously then, you know, half the wealth goes or whatever it is, and then they might invest something in a business that doesn't work, and all of a sudden things are not that good. So, you know, it sounds wonderful, but there's a lot of life after football, because it's a young man's game. You finished in your early 30s generally. So, you know, lots of them do fine, but lots don't. And it's not that easy. Obviously, with the amount they're earning these days, you would hope that they've got some sensible people around them and they invest sensibly, because it's not all about money. It's about missing the game as well. But it does help. So it's mixed. Some cope with it very well. Others really do struggle.
Yeah. And so how long have you been doing Match of the Day for now? How many years?
Well, Des left in 99. So
99, okay.
Years. I was presenting since 96 at the beginning, as this kind of number 2. So yeah, a long time.
Yeah. Was that something you had an eye on whilst you were playing? Like, or maybe I'll get into this, something you're interested in?
Well, even when I played, I always knew what I wanted to do. I didn't actually think I'll be presenting Match of the Day in a few years' time, but I knew what I wanted to do, and I trained accordingly. I used to, write newspaper columns for the Observer and stuff, just to learn to write. I did a lot of Radio 5 Live in the early days when I was pretty hopeless, but it was a good learning curve. And then broke into television. So I knew what I wanted. In fact, used to nickname, I think it was Italian 90, Gazza and Waddle used to call me Junior Des. I think it was the grey hair that were coming in.
So yeah, well, I saw, I don't know if it was about a year ago, where you Shearer and Wrighty were kind of doing your top players in certain positions for Premier League history. And I think there was the best striker. I think you went Henry, and Shearer and Wrighty both went for Shearer. And still stick by that as a Newcastle fan. I kind of, Henry couldn't head a ball. I always.
Well, obviously had to wind him up a little bit, but they were both great in different ways. Yeah. I think, as goal scorer, I would say Alan was, if it's just been called goal scorers, but if it's called strikers, that kind of suggests footballers. And I think
better player,
in terms of ability, but listen, they're both great. Alan was an unbelievably brilliant striker. Thierry Henry was also a brilliant goal scorer, but he was such a beautiful footballer as well. So that's why I edged it for me. And you can't let him have it all his own way.
He's used to it too much up north, I think. But then again, I have got a story, and I'll forgive Alan for this. I've got a story about Shearer. The first time I went to St James's Park, it was my 13th birthday. Bobby Robson managing the team. My dad and mum drove us up there, and it was Newcastle versus Charlton Athletic. So Charlton in the Premier League. That's how long ago it was. We won 2-1. I remember Laurent Robert and I think Shearer might have got a goal. And I really wanted to meet Alan Shearer. And all the players are coming out after the game. All the Newcastle fans were like, "No, you've come from Oxford. You go that side, because this is where the away players come out." So went there, met all the Newcastle players coming out. You had Kieran Dyer, Bellamy, Shay Given, and Solano, and all these great players. And then Shearer was kind of going out this other way with a gate, and my dad, he ran over there, and he was with his Mrs. Shearer, and my dad was like, "We've come from Oxford, it's my son's birthday," and all this. And But his missus wanted him to get in the car, you see. He said, no, come on, you get him to cheer, sort of shrugged his shoulders and said, sorry, mate, in the car.
They blanked you.
Yeah, well, I was froze. He kind of looked to my dad and said, sorry, mate, and shrugged his shoulders. But I was just frozen in awe, just that Shearer was in the distance of me. But
I'll tell him on Saturday. I'll tell him what a horrible bloke he was.
So you broke a 13-year-old's birthday wish. Yeah, my dad said it was probably his missus' fault, to be fair. It's usually the way. Get in the car, Alan. Did you get to talk to Shearer much about the way Newcastle are at the minute in terms of, I mean, everyone knows he's kind of...
Well, of course. We spend a lot of time together.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, how do you feel sort of as someone that's kind of neutral about the running of Newcastle?
It's completely fair of me to tell you everything he says.
Yeah, no. Well, I guess, what's Gary Lineker's opinion?
No, obviously he's frustrated like all the Newcastle fans are. It's such a giant of a club in many ways, but it's not got that stature in terms of trophies and stuff and success on the field that obviously it probably deserves. So yeah, I think the frustrations there, probably the same frustrations that the fans have got with the owners, etc. And he understands probably how difficult it is for whoever the manager is. If it's a difficult one, isn't it? I think he'd like the fans as well. He'd like to see them, try and play a bit more expansive football, Leeds style, if you want. But if they did, would they capitulate and end up in the bottom three? Who knows? It's tough because ultimately, it's about players. Mm-hmm. Football's about players. We always get carried away about tactics and managers and this and that and the other. And obviously, the best managers get the best out of the best players, but it is about players. It's about players, their abilities and their attitudes. And if you've got the best players, generally unless you've got an idiotic coach, then generally you'll do the best. So I think you're looking at them. They're a bit short on being a team that can challenge for Europe or the top half at the moment. At least half a team of real talent they need, probably. Yeah. But that needs big investment, and they've not really had that. And when they have, they've kind of not spent it. It does in football. It's all about how you spend your budget, whatever that budget is, and recruitment is so vital. If you get recruitment right, if you get 7 out of 10 right, then you've got half a chance. If you get 3 out of 10 right, you're in trouble.
Yeah, I think with Newcastle,
if you get none right, you're in desperate trouble.
Well, yeah, I just think as a Newcastle fan, we find it baffling how Mike Ashley, the owner, was so reluctant to back Rafa. And now we've got Steve Bruce in, whatever anyone's opinion on Steve Bruce isn't for here or there, but he has backed Steve Bruce compared to how he did Rafa. Alan St-Maximum, Callum Wilson, Ryan Fraser. He's brought some decent players in, but it's just like, why didn't you back Rafa? Why couldn't you back Rafa Benitez?
Rafa's clever as well. I mean, Rafa's not daft. So it's. I don't know. I'm not a manager. I've never been a manager. I see footballers. I love footballers, and I see managers that I want to play for and stuff like this. And I love the game. But unless you're actually on the inside of things, it's really hard to know what's really going on. But I think there's, I can understand the frustrations of the Newcastle fans. I really can. But it's not easy. But when hopefully it'll turn for you at some point. You'll get a Leicester moment.
That's what we need. We need that Leicester moment.
It gives everyone hope, though, that Leicester moment.
It does.
If you'd have said that, 12 months before, I'd have thought you would start raving mad.
Yeah.
So you never know football, and that's the beauty of it. So keep the faith.
Keep the faith, absolutely. Keep the faith. And I mean, how do you see some of these younger managers coming in, like managing the big teams like Arteta, Solskjaer, Lampard? Are they? I have lots of mates that are Man United fans. I do give them a bit of banter about it.
He's doing all right. He's doing a really good job. They're right at the top of the league at the moment. I think, it's so easy. All we ever do, isn't it? The team gets 3 or 4 bad results and we attack the manager. That's happened to Solskjaer a few times. But he's done all right. And he seems, you look at that United team and at the reactions after games, and they seem to have a real togetherness at the moment. And I'll go back to my other point. They've got some very good players. Very, very
Fernandez.
good players, particularly, they have. And they've had loads of stick for their recruitment and they've got it wrong for a long time. But, in the last 3 years, I think they've shifted it a bit, looked at younger players, some English players, some not. but looking a bit more to the future, and they've got it right. They've had some good buys, and Bruno Fernandes in particular. So they're doing great. Frank Lampard, if they get rid of him now, it would be stupid, in my opinion, because he was never going to be like run away with the league this season. Because when you spend so much money on so many players at the same time, it takes time for some of those players to adjust. It takes time for the manager to know what his best team. He's got to look at this, look at that, and the other. All in all, they're doing okay. They've had a little bad run now. It's a blip. They'll bounce out of it and go again. If they get rid of Frank now, then where they're going to go? Somebody, I think he's got the makings. He showed it. He did all right. People say he's got no experience. No, he hasn't got much. Neither had Pep Guardiola when he started at Barcelona. He'd had 1 year or two running Barcelona's reserves in the do play in the second division. A bit like Frank doing Derby County, not the same club, but so he's doing all right. Steven Gerrard's doing all right. Rangers, they're showing real promise. Yes, because they've had such incredible careers, they've been given jobs that perhaps they wouldn't ordinarily get. But I see them doing okay. And football's so fickle. You wait, Frank wins the next 3 games, this will all be forgotten.
Well, look about Arteta.
I hope Abramovich sticks with him. We know that Chelsea have a history of not being very patient. But what's the point of investing that much money into Frank's thinking and plans on young players, on very young players that need time? What's the point of then just bailing out halfway through when you're not doing that badly? If they're in the bottom 4 or 5, you could sort of understand it. And the same with Arteta. You pin faith in someone, you just give him a chance. Go with it. So that but it's not a patient game. And fans think they all know best. And the truth is, none of us know best, and that includes me. You don't really know what's going on the inside of a football club, but give them time and then judge. Obviously, if things go horribly wrong and you're in the bottom 3 of some big club, and then things have to be done. But by and large, I think a bit more patience wouldn't go amiss.
A bit more patient, and I guess I don't know if you could put your neck on the line and say who you fancy for the league this season. Are you able to?
It's
going to be tight.
I think if there's ever a season that we could have a random winner, it's this one because of circumstances, etc. It's very difficult to predict. If Man City look to, I think we'll be very close. And Liverpool, obviously, I still think Liverpool will win it. Probably from City. Manchester United, I think, could push them, get closer. I think it's probably still a little bit early from them. But you know what? When you get a bit of belief and a bit of confidence and you get on a roll, things can happen. Hopefully it'll be Leicester, though.
Yeah, I was going to say, you didn't say Tottenham or Leicester. Maybe Tottenham, I think they've got an outside chance.
Well,
Mourinho.
They've got an outside chance. They're probably, they're probably a bit short, really. Brilliant up front. If anything happened to either Kane or Son, that'd be difficult. But they're making progress. He's brought in some good players. He plays his way, Jose. We know that, but it's a way that can produce successful clubs and bring in trophies. So we'll have to wait and see. But I still think it was City or Liverpool, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, one question lots of people want me to ask you. I said, I'm going to talk to Gary Lineker. What do you want me to sort of say? And I say, what's your favourite crisps? What are your favourite crisps? That is the question that most people ask me to ask.
I know, it's the question I get asked more than anything else. It's salt and vinegar, obviously.
Salt and vinegar. Well, salt and vinegar back in the day. Yeah.
Love salt and vinegar.
Yeah, do you ever? I guess you get your crisps for. Do you have like a lifetime of your walkers just send you them?
I do get sent a fair amount.
Yeah. I was going to say, you're never like in a supermarket down the crisp bar and someone's.
I still occasionally do, but you know what? When I put one in my basket or whatever it is, I always feel a bit embarrassed.
Yeah.
I'm like because people walk by and they go, "Oh yeah."
Yeah, I was going to say they must go. Oh, of course, got your crisp.
But I never buy any of the others. Then only Walkers, obviously.
Yeah, of course. And I guess to finish, Gary, how would you like to see us as a country emerge from COVID-19?
Soon, hopefully. I think I think everything now needs to be thrown at the vaccine. I think we've all got to hopefully everyone get together on this. I think there's been a lot of people volunteering to try and help. Let's roll it out, get it out there, and I think that's the only way we're going to return to normal, because we've not been good enough in the other ways in terms of testing and tracing and stuff like that. And we've been late to a lot of things, and it's desperate times. But hopefully the vaccine is the light at the end of the tunnel, and hopefully spring maybe we can gradually return to normal.
Yeah, well, Gary, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. Do tell Shearer off for me, but I'll forgive him.
Thank
you.
I will.
Cheers.
My pleasure. Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.